Usually when we talk about a major global crisis, there is a very predictable ripple effect.
Oh, for sure. The world gets messy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Supply chains snap, and corporate profits, especially in travel, they just plummet. It's basically the law of economic gravity. You just don't fly planes into a crisis.
Right. It's a super straightforward equation. Instability creates friction, friction costs money, and, well, airlines operate on infamously thin margins to begin with.
But then you look at where we are today, May 14th, 2026.
Right.
The global aviation industry has spent the last few months being just absolutely battered by the outbreak of the U.S.-Iran war.
Yeah, it's been rough.
We are looking at widespread airspace closures across the Middle East, flight maps that look like, I don't know, endless expensive detours, and oil prices just spiking to astronomical levels. It's total chaos.
Complete chaos.
And yet, against all odds, the Emirates Group just reported the highest profit in the entire history of global aviation. A staggering $6.6 billion US dollars. That is 24.4 billion dirhams.
I mean, it shouldn't be possible. Given the operating environment of the last few months, it's the absolute definition of a financial paradox.
And that is exactly our mission for you today on this custom-tailored deep dive. We're going to figure out how this happened.
We really need to look at the mechanics of it.
Yeah, we are unpacking the operational witchcraft that makes Emirates the world's most profitable airline, somehow beating out the massive legacy U.S. giants while literally sitting right next to a conflict zone.
Right, so we'll be decoding the fundamental differences in how Emirates actually generates revenue compared to those U.S. rivals.
Definitely.
We'll look at their massive A380 fleet, the unique Dubai Aerotropolis model, and how they lean on a dual strategy of high-end luxury and massive cargo operations.
But before we really get into the weeds, I want to set a clear parameter for you. Over the course of this deep dive, we will obviously be discussing the ongoing military activity between the U.S. and Iran.
Because it's the primary stress test for this airline right now.
Exactly. But we want to be completely 100% clear. Yeah. We aren't here to endorse any geopolitical viewpoints or take sides in the conflict.
No, not at all.
Our goal is simply to impartially convey the facts of the situation and its direct impact on global travel, exactly as they're laid out in our source material.
Right. We're looking at this strictly through the lens of aviation economics, supply chains, and operational logistics.
Okay, let's unpack this profit paradox. To understand that $6.6 billion record profit, which, by the way, represents a massive 17.4% profit margin, we first have to understand their whole revenue model.
Because it's fundamentally different from major U.S. rivals like Delta, United, or American.
Right. So Emirates retained its title as the world's most profitable airline for the second year in a row, beating Delta, who posted a $5 billion profit.
Which is still a lot of money.
It is. Yeah. But I was looking at the breakdown of how Delta actually made that $5 billion, and man, it completely shifted my perspective on the airline industry.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that to understand Emirates, you really have to understand the illusion of the U.S. airline industry.
The illusion?
Yeah, because the major legacy carriers in the U.S. are, structurally speaking, banks with wings.
Wait, banks with wings? I mean, what does that even mean?
Essentially, they largely do not make their massive profits from the physical act of transporting you from point A to point B.
Really?
Yeah, the actual flying part of the business is incredibly expensive and volatile. Instead, they make their real money through their frequent flyer programs and brand partnerships.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, for instance, last year, Delta earned $8 billion in royalties just from American Express.
Wait, $8 billion just from a credit card partnership? How does that actually work mechanically?
So the airline basically creates frequent flyer miles out of thin air. They sell those miles to the credit card company American Express, in this case.
Okay, tracking so far.
Then American Express uses those miles to reward you, the consumer, for using their card. The credit card company pays the airline billions in cash for those miles, right?
Right.
And the airline essentially gets an interest-free loan and a massive revenue injection. When it comes to the actual physical cost of flying, the cost per air seat mile versus the revenue per air seat mile, U.S. airlines are frankly lucky just to break even.
Wow. So the U.S. airlines are basically credit card loyalty programs that, like, operate a fleet of planes on the side to justify the points.
Exactly.
But Emirates doesn't have that kind of massive domestic co-branded credit card monopoly. So they must be highly profitable on the actual flight operations themselves.
They are. They're a pure, highly tuned transportation machine, and we can actually measure that efficiency. In aviation, the core metric for this is the ATK, the available ton kilometer.
Okay, pretend I don't have a degree in aviation finance. What does ATK actually measure?
Sure, it measures the total capacity of an airline. So 1 ATK means the airline has the capacity to carry 1 metric ton of payload, whether that's passengers, luggage, or commercial cargo over a distance of 1 kilometer.
Okay, got it. It's like the ultimate baseline for operational efficiency.
Precisely. And Emirates operates with a total cost per ATK that is 26% lower than their European peers.
Hold on. I have to push back here because I know what you, the listener, might be thinking right now.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, whenever we talk about Gulf carriers making billions, the immediate reaction from critics is, oh, it's imaginary math. It's
Right.
endless government oil money paying for free jet fuel.
Right, the classic subsidy argument.
Exactly. So are you telling me the 17.4% margin is actually real operational profit? Or is it just creative accounting?
It is very real, and it's independently audited to international financial reporting standards.
Okay, so no imaginary math.
No, the imaginary math and free fuel narrative is mostly a ghost of old lobbying campaigns by Western competitors. The reality is that Emirates has profound structural advantages that have nothing to do with subsidies.
Okay, so what are the advantages then?
It has everything to do with their regulatory environment. Let's look at labor, for example. Emirates' labor costs are around 40% of what their European peers pay.
Wait, 40%? How is that even legal?
It comes down to the structure of the labor market in the UAE. They just don't have complex legacy union structures to negotiate with.
Oh,
Yeah, the contracts are straightforward. Furthermore, the regional tax frameworks are significantly lower. Even with the UAE recently adopting a new 15% corporate tax rate, the overarching burden on the company is incredibly light compared to an airline in Germany or the US.
Right, so they're just fundamentally leaner by design. But, I mean, if Emirates is actually making their money on the physical act of flying, while U.S. carriers are basically hovering at break-even until someone swipes a platinum card, the secret has to lie in what kind of planes they're flying and how they wrote them.
Spot on. That brings us to the core physical difference, the fleet and the hub.
Let's talk about the fleet, because Emirates dominates the skies with a very specific, young, modern wide-body fleet, specifically the Airbus A380.
Yeah, the super jumbo.
Right, they have 116 of these massive double-decker planes in their fleet. But here's what confuses me. Almost every other airline that bought the A380 totally failed to make it work.
Yeah, they really struggled.
People said it was too big, it burned too much fuel, it was just too hard to fill. Why is Emirates making record profits off a plane that everyone else practically abandoned?
Well, the mechanism here is economies of scale, but it only works if you have the network to support it.
Okay, explain that.
The A380 has massive capacity, upwards of 500 to 600 passengers, depending on how they configure it. When you actually fill a plane that large, your cost per seat absolutely plummets.
It becomes super efficient.
Incredibly efficient. But to fill a 600-seat plane consistently, day in and day out, you can't just fly point to point between random cities like Denver and Seattle.
Which is exactly how U.S. airlines operate.
Yeah.
They have these incredibly fragmented networks. You've got hubs all over the place, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Newark.
Great, a totally different model.
And they're all just bouncing passengers back and forth on hundreds of smaller, older, much less efficient aircraft like Boeing 737s or Airbus A320s.
Exactly. That U.S. domestic model requires a massive fleet of smaller planes because the population is spread out across multiple major economic centers.
Makes sense.
But the Dubai model operates on a completely different philosophy. It is the ultimate expression of the hub-and-spoke model. I think you described it earlier as a roundabout.
Yeah, like if U.S. networks are a messy web of intersecting country roads, Dubai is a massive, hyper-efficient central roundabout.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Everything flows from Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas into Dubai, and everything flows right back out of Dubai. But logically, funneling tens of millions of people through one single airport, doesn't that create a catastrophic operational bottleneck?
In a traditional city, it absolutely would, and this is where the concept of the aerotropolis comes in.
Aerotropolis, I like that word.
It's very fitting. Dubai doesn't treat its airport as just a piece of infrastructure. The entire city operates as a singular, unified ecosystem.
How so?
Well, the airline, Dubai Airports, and the Department of Economy and Tourism, the DET, they don't fight each other for budget or argue over regulations. They work in total structural synergy.
So everyone is on exactly the same page.
Yes. Every dollar invested in Emirates Airline is specifically designed to have a positive knock-on effect for the city's trade and tourism.
So the city is built to support the airline, and the airline is built to feed the city.
Exactly. But the real secret weapon preventing that financial bottleneck is what they call their dual engine.
Dual engine.
Yeah. We've talked about the airline, which is the profit engine. It takes the big risks for the high margins. But they also have a stability engine, a company called dnata.
Okay, dnata, D-N-A-T-A. What exactly do they do?
They're the aviation services division of the Emirates Group. Legacy airlines in the US and EU have spent decades outsourcing their ground handling, their catering, their cargo logistics to third-party contractors just to cut their fixed costs.
Right. Everyone outsources everything now.
But Emirates did the exact opposite. They vertically integrated. They own dnata.
And looking at our sources, dnata isn't just a small side project making airplane meals. They generated $6.4 billion in revenue last year alone.
It's massive. And here is the crucial detail regarding how they protect themselves. 77% of that dnata revenue came from outside the UAE.
Wait, really? Outside the UAE?
Yes, they handle operations in airports across Australia, Europe, the UK, and the US.
Oh, I see. So they are basically making money off their competitors.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it creates a powerful portfolio smoothing effect.
Smoothing effect.
Right. Let's say passenger demand for Emirates flights suddenly drops because of an economic downturn. The Emirates Group is insulated because dnata is still generating stable, long-term contract revenue from servicing over 100 other airlines around the world.
So they're diversified physically, even if they are centralized geographically.
Nailed it.
Okay, so let's summarize the machine so far. They have these massive A380s flying through a hyper-efficient, vertically integrated single hub, and they have lower baseline costs.
That's the foundation, yeah.
But that's only half the battle. To hit a 17.4% profit margin, you also have to fill those giant planes with the most lucrative payloads possible.
Absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at how they load these planes, you realize an Emirates A380 is essentially a flying luxury hotel that secretly has a massive, highly profitable Amazon warehouse operating down in the basement.
That is a very vivid way to describe their yield strategy, but it's very accurate. Let's look at the luxury hotel aspect upstairs first.
Okay, let's do it.
Their passenger yield was up 4% this year. Emirates leans heavily into experiential luxury, which, drives premium pricing.
Right, we're talking about the famous onboard showers in first class, the horseshoe-shaped cocktail bars on the A380 where you can go mingle. They are selling a theatrical scale of luxury.
It's very theatrical.
Which is a huge contrast to their main regional rival, Qatar Airways. Qatar is famous for the Q suite in business class, which is all about privacy. It's sliding doors, precision, flying under the radar.
It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah. Emirates, on the other hand, wants you to be seen. You're having a drink at 40,000 feet. It completely justifies a massive premium price tag.
It absolutely justifies the price, and those premium seats heavily subsidize the economy cabin. But the premium passengers upstairs are only part of the equation.
Right. We can't forget the basement.
Exactly. The warehouse in the basement, the cargo lifeline. Cargo is not just an afterthought or a way to fill empty space for Emirates. It's a primary driver of their survival.
So how big is that operation?
Well, last year, Emirates Sky Cargo carried 2.4 million tons of goods. That brought in $4.4 billion, which is 12% of their total revenue.
Wow. $4.4 billion just in freight. And reading through the timeline of the last few months, that cargo capability proved to be their absolute saving grace.
It really did.
Which brings us to the crucible of this whole deep dive. The geopolitical instability and the U.S.-Iran war.
This is where things get really tense.
Yeah, because that incredible agility with cargo was born out of absolute necessity. In February 2026, the very geographic location that makes the Dubai Central Roundabout so powerful suddenly became its biggest liability.
The disruption to the global network was immediate and severe.
It's just instant chaos.
Right. When the military activity escalated, it led to 46,000 canceled regional flights in just the first 2 weeks.
46,000? That's insane.
Entire swaths of airspace over Iran and the broader Gulf were completely closed to commercial aviation for safety. Airlines connecting east and west were suddenly forced to funnel all their planes through a very narrow 50-mile wide corridor over Georgia and Azerbaijan.
A 50-mile corridor for a massive percentage of global air traffic. The logistical nightmare of that is hard to even fathom.
It's a massive bottleneck,
And the sources say it added over an hour to flight times for these long-haul routes.
which is a huge deal. Adding an hour to a heavy, wide-body flight is catastrophic for airline economics. It means burning thousands of extra gallons of jet fuel per flight.
And this happened exactly as the conflict disrupted maritime trade in the Strait of Hormuz, right?
Exactly. The timing couldn't have been worse.
The Strait of Hormuz handles about 20% of global oil consumption, if I remember correctly. So the moment that waterway is threatened, the oil markets just panic.
Prices skyrocketed.
Yeah, crude prices push toward $125 a barrel.
And for the legacy U.S. airlines that we mentioned earlier, who largely operate without long-term fuel hedging, this was a nightmare.
Because they have to pay whatever the current price is.
Yes, they had to absorb those massive spot market fuel costs instantly. We saw some airfares skyrocket by 79% just to cover the panic buying of jet fuel.
Okay, stop right there because this is the crux of how they survived. You mentioned Emirates is fuel hedged. What does that actually mean in practice? How do you even hedge millions of gallons of jet fuel?
It's a great question. Fuel hedging is essentially an insurance policy that airlines use to protect themselves against exactly this kind of volatility.
Okay, how does it work?
An airline will go to the financial markets and buy futures contracts. They agree to buy millions of barrels of oil at a set, fixed price, say, $80 a barrel for the next 3 years, regardless of what happens in the real world.
Ah, I see. So if the price drops to $60, the airline actually loses out because they still have to pay $80.
Correct. That's the risk they take.
But if a war breaks out and the price spikes to $125,
The airline still only pays $80. Their costs are completely locked in. While competitors were bleeding cash paying spot prices, Emirates was shielded.
wow.
Yeah, they're thoroughly fuel hedged until the 2028-2029 fiscal year. They plan for a rainy day in the Middle East.
That is brilliant financial discipline. But, I mean, they still had to deal with the reality that people were, understandably, nervous about flying through a conflict zone. Passenger numbers were taking a hit.
They were, yeah.
And this is where that Amazon warehouse agility kicked in. When the Strait of Hormuz maritime shipping broke down, all that global freight electronics, medical supplies, perishable goods, it still needed to move between Asia and Europe.
This is a perfect example of their operational elasticity. Emirates temporarily reassigned 14 of their passenger jets to operate strictly as cargo-only flights.
Wait, they just converted passenger planes into freighters overnight?
Not permanently, no, but they utilized the massive belly capacity of those passenger Boeing 777s without worrying about filling the seats upstairs.
Oh, that's clever.
And at the same time, they pushed their 13 dedicated Boeing 777 freighters to absolute maximum capacity. Their network control center essentially rebuilt their global logistics schedule on the fly.
Just adapting in real time.
And because they own dnata, their ground handlers, they didn't have to spend weeks negotiating with outside contractors to handle this new cargo surge. They just executed the pivot internally.
I hear you. The $6.6 billion profit speaks for itself. They definitely won this round.
They did.
But, I have to challenge this overall optimism. Yes, they survived this crisis with brilliant fuel hedging and cargo pivoting. But if your entire global empire relies on a single node Dubai, aren't you basically a sitting duck if the geopolitical situation completely boils over?
It's a very fair point.
Like, you can buy all the fuel futures you want, but you can't hedge against a totally closed airspace.
This raises an important question, and it highlights the exact existential threat to the Emirates model. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the inherent flaw is hub concentration.
Right, all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Their financial discipline and structural integration saved them this time. But the geographic reality of the Middle East remains a permanent sword of Damocles over their long-term growth.
It's unavoidable.
If the conflict escalates further and airspace closures become total or sustained over years rather than months, the economics of long-haul rerouting will simply break down.
Because an extra hour of flight time is manageable with a fuel hedge. 3 extra hours or a complete blockade of your only hub is just game over.
It's the ultimate double-edged sword. The geography that connects East and West so perfectly, allowing them to reach anywhere in the world with one stop, is the exact same geography that is highly susceptible to conflict.
So they've engineered the most efficient airline machine on the planet, but it operates in a highly fragile environment. Every advantage they have is intrinsically linked to that specific location on the map.
Could have said it better.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, it means the next time you book a flight, you should realize that your ticket is a reflection of so much more than just a seat assignment.
It's a piece of a global puzzle.
Exactly. You are buying into a massive, complex global strategy. You should look at how global events quietly dictate the price of your ticket, the route your plane takes, and why the airline is making or losing money on your journey.
It's fascinating when you peel back the layers.
It really is. Emirates defies gravity not by accident, but by relying on massive, highly filled A380 operations instead of just credit card miles. They do it by controlling their entire ecosystem through dnata, leaning into rapid cargo agility when passenger demand drops, and using long-term financial foresight to survive regional wars.
They aren't just reacting to the market, they are playing a completely different game of chess than their legacy competitors.
And they're already planning their next massive moves, which leaves us with a fascinating glimpse into the immediate future to mull over. Right now, Dubai is preparing to shift their massive operations to the new Al Maktoum International Airport, known as DWC.
Which is going to be massive.
Yeah, it's being built to handle an astonishing 100 million passengers. But they aren't just pouring concrete to build a bigger building. They are rolling out absolute sci-fi tech to maintain this flow.
Oh, the biometric stuff.
Yeah, they have this system called the red carpet. It's an AI biometric corridor that clears immigration for passengers in 3.4 seconds.
3.4 seconds.
Yes, you don't stop, you don't talk to a guard, you don't even show a single physical document. Your face is your passport and you just walk right through. Nearly 800,000 people have already used it.
I mean, it's a remarkable leap in seamless travel. By removing the human friction from the security and immigration bottleneck, they can theoretically push an endless stream of passengers through that single node without the system collapsing.
But it leaves us with this massive question. As Emirates builds this ultimate, highly centralized, AI-driven mega hub of the future, will this intense centralization make them the undisputed, untouchable king of the skies? Or, in an increasingly chaotic and unpredictable world, will pouring absolutely everything into one single node make their single point of failure more vulnerable than ever before? Definitely something to think about the next time you're having a drink at 40,000 feet.